Okay, we're going to work on cornhole boards again today. We're going to go ahead and kind of just downloaded a little quick plans. Somebody wanted some cornhole boards, so we're going to go ahead. There's a lot of plans out there online, so you just go out there and grab them up, and kind of gives you the dimensions and where they're supposed to go and this type of thing. So we're going to go ahead and show you that. First thing we need to do is, this one here is yellow wood. I don't know, you can get whichever ones you want. I should kind of show you. Ooh, this one here. It does give us dimensions. We're going to go ahead and we can just tell you that you'll need basically the whole material list is 4 8-foot 2x4s, half a sheet of half-inch plywood, 2 4-inch carriage bolts and nuts, and something to finish it with. Either, you know, you can do whatever you want on it, paint and decals and whatever fancy things you want to put on it, and that should take care of you. So the basic dimensions of it, 48 inches long, 24 inches wide. We'll need a 6-inch hole cut for the bags to go through. So we'll kind of go through that. Nothing real special about it. You do want to buy, at least I would say, at least BC grade plywood, something that's going to be pretty smooth surface on it. If you want it as slick as you want to have it, when you put the finish on there, it will kind of improve the slickness, depending on how much sliding you want on your bags. I don't know if there's a regulation that tells you that. So we're going to go ahead and get started with it. And of course, the first thing we'll have to do is we'll go ahead and went to the lumber yard and bought our full 2x4s. And so we're going to set this up, and we're just simply going to cut these four of them 4 foot long, and four a little bit less than that, so we end up with 24 inches of length. And so we'll kind of go over that real quick. I'm going to do my cutting on the saw over here. So I'm going to go ahead and set up on my radial arm saw a stop, so I can get all the sizes exactly the same. You can do this with chopped saw. You can do this with really pretty much any saw you have available for yourself. So we'll go ahead and set up on that and show you how we put it together, get the frame done. Okay, we're all set up. We've got the stop set up on my saw. That keeps all the pieces exactly the same length, makes it easier to put it together at the end. And so we'll go ahead and start up the dust collector that I like to use to keep a little bit safer, and we'll cut these boards up real quick. Okay, I'm going to be cutting this just a little bit shorter. I was a little off on that. We want to make sure these are exactly the same length. Apparently that board's closer than I thought. We're going to go ahead and set it back up with the shorter of the two and make sure they're exact same length. Sometimes that happens. It's not going to make a difference. It's like 16 o'clock. So we'll just put that up against my blade, and we'll move my stop down that far. Reset it up, and we know this one's good. So we'll set that off to the side, and then we'll go fire it back up again and cut these. All right, that gives us our next set. 4 boards will do that part. So we'll set those off to the side. And to do the same thing for the ends. Cut those pieces. The only thing we'll have to do different on those is we'll need to make sure that we're within the 24 inches. So I'll rearrange my boards here so we can set them up on the bench and kind of talk about how to figure out that exact length that we're going to need to get between the two of them. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is figure out, we've got the two lengths of them. Now we need 24 inches wide, and the easiest way to do that is to put your two together instead of trying to calculate exactly what the thickness of your 2x4s are and subtract that off of there. Do it the easy way. You take your tape measure out, you put your 24 inches, the width you want on it, and then you simply measure down here and make sure that it's all the same, and of course it's 21 inches. So we'll go ahead and cut the length of that board, and that'll give us our 24 inches when we're done. So we'll set that up on the saw and cut them the same way we did with the length ones, and we'll have all four pieces ready to go together. Okay, I've got the ends cut, and we can go ahead and see that I've kind of laid them on the bench here. And if we measure them, we'll see that by doing that, we end up with the 24 inches that we require for the width. So the next thing I like to do on this, you can just drop screws straight in. I'll go ahead and run a countersink into them, and we'll do a one-step countersink, and the ends, and then run screws into them. I just like the looks better. Kind of countersinks them a little bit. Like I say, this is kind of an optional. You don't have to do it this way. But I have the tools here, so I might as well do it. So stick those together. And I use some screws that I've got here for my decking and this type of thing. Screws to put together, line up the end. Continue on around and put the sides together, and we should be in good shape. Ready to go to the next step. Okay, today I'm going to have to build a 2x4 with a circle on the end of it for a cornhole board, actually. So what we're going to want to do is end up with something that looks like that. And so I'm going to go over a couple of different ways you can do that and get a good accurate cut around it, what I prefer to do it, and just a couple different ways depending on the tools you have. So we'll go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is we've got to take a 2x4, and we'll show you how to find the center of it. We have to come in, find the center of it, measure down enough that we'll be able to round this over, and show you exactly how we go about setting this up. Okay, the first thing we want to do is probably go ahead and find the center of our 2x4. A couple ways to do that. One, a square. And if you line this up with this corner and simply draw a cross on that, and then line it up this way to get the other diagonal from the corner, you would be, the center of your 2x4 is right there. And then you want to draw this out to where you do it. I've got just a little inexpensive protractor. So if we know that's the center, we can set that right there and figure out what it takes to get from half to half. And then this works out really well because it does end up actually coming right into it. And we can draw a circle on there. So this would be our point that we want to cut. So we end up with a small circle to follow. Now, the first way we can cut this, most people have a jigsaw, so we can go ahead and set up a jigsaw and cut this around this and see how that works, and then we'll go on to another way of doing it. Okay, the first way we do it, we'll take our little Bosch jigsaw, something similar to that. Make sure your blade's long enough that it's actually going to go all the way through the 2x4, and we can go ahead and cut this. And that looks like that works pretty well. It's got fairly good form, but if you do look at it kind of closer, you can see on a jigsaw, they do kind of, this side here is in a little further than this. So your blade really isn't as square as you could get it. Now for what I'm building this, for a cornhole bowler, it would probably be fine, but you can see it's off a little bit on the squareness, and they always seem to do that. They wander a little bit. It's not a real smooth surface. So we're going to try another way of doing this also. So on this, we're going to go ahead and use a bandsaw next and see if that helps us any. We're going to lay it out the same way. I'm going to take this side and we're going to go down our 45. And 45 on the other. And we'll do the small thing, and we'll mark our circle again to give us a line. And we've got that laid out. So now we're going to go to the bandsaw and we'll see if we can improve the cut any and see how that works out. So we'll set this up, and we've got our bandsaw. And we'll go ahead and run that real quick and see how that goes. First thing I did, I should have gone ahead, and I'm not paying attention. This guard really needs to be down here closer to the height of that, so somebody's going to gig me on that, I'm sure. We'll get that moved down so it kind of holds that blade in place a little bit better. Okay, and we get that. It cuts it. It looks all right. Still had to fight with it a little bit. But it is square coming off the end. It's a nice square cut. We're going to have to do some sanding on that. That's still a little bit of a rough thing. So now we'll go one other way to do it. It takes a little bit more prep work, but I think it'll work out well. So what we're going to do here now is we're actually going to cut this on the table saw. So the first thing we need to do is, I have done this before, so we have what I call my fancy little jig here. It's just basically a 2x or a piece of plywood, and it's got a guide on it. And then I've drilled a hole here that will go into it, and I have just a bolt that sticks up through it. And then this goes on my table saw. Like I say, this doesn't have to be a real fancy jig or anything, but you'll see that that's pretty much just sets it up, and that comes off of that. Now when you make the jig, the hole here is going to be the same as the distance from it's the halfway point basically of your 2x. So if you were to set a 2x on there, you come down through, you can see the blade raises, and it's the width of the 2x. So we can take that all the way up, so it'll cut through it like that. Now the only thing else we do have to do with our 2x to do this is we will have to take a drill and drill a hole through here so that your 2x actually measures your center point. So we'll find our center again, and we should be able to drill a small hole that'll fit that 1/4-inch bolt, and we'll go about that process. So I got to find me another 2x4, and then we will set that up and be ready to go. Okay, for this one, we're also going to do the same thing we have been doing. We'll set up our 45 so we can find the center of it. And this away. And that gives us our spot for where we want to drill our hole, which will be exactly that halfway point. So if we wanted to, we could draw that again, but we really don't need to because the saw is really going to take care of it. But that's what it's going to look like when we're done. So we'll go ahead and drill this hole out on our drill press or whatever drill you have available. Like I say, these are all kind of depends on what your shop equipment is. So now we have a hole in it, and we should be able to now go to the table saw. We might have to build this just a smidgen longer, we'll have to see. But we'll set this up, see if we can kind of gather what I'm doing with this. Okay, so when you do that, you set this on it, down through your bolt. If you can line it up, there we go. So now you see it's there. So when we've got that set up, I need to set up my dust collection. I do like to use that, so it will get a little bit noisy. But this is it. I have taken all the guards off just to make this a little bit easier to do this. But this makes a pretty good push stick, and you can control it pretty well. So we'll go ahead and fire up the dust collector. Hopefully not too much noise. And you simply and when you get done, you actually have what I consider a nice square cut and round it over, and it makes a perfect cut every time. So those would be the three ways I can see people doing it without too much trouble. And we'll go ahead and build a couple more because we have to have some legs on this for the cornhole boards, and we'll need at least one more of them, and I'll probably choose to do this. And then my hole in the 2x4 needs to be done anyways because it's going to have a bolt there to hold it onto the cornhole boards. So we'll go ahead and do one more and get them ready to go on the boards. All right, so we've got my legs are all cut for all the boards. They're all rounded over. I run a little bit of a sanding on it, just enough to kind of knock off any rough edges after experimenting with that. So now the next thing we need to do, these are going to have to get cut at an angle, and I'm going to show you two different ways to do that also to make sure it works. But basically these are going to sit on the inside edge here, and we want those to be able to, when this goes up, it's got to swing around and it's going to come back and sit on the ground like that to hold it up. So we want this is going to have to fall back away from this edge a little bit, but we do want it to be exactly in the center. So what I've done is, they say that you want to have that center of this hole of your leg to be about 4 inches from here. So we can come in here and we'll do 4 inches to the center of that hole, and the hole is right there. We'll measure down 4 inches. And so we're going to go right there. So 4 inches down, line up our center of the hole so that we know exactly where we got to go. And then I want all these holes to be exactly that same. So I think what I'm going to do is measure this distance inside of here and just use this as a jig. And it looks like we're about 3/4 of an inch off of the end of this to the start of the round. So I think that'll be a good way to start. So I think we'll just go ahead and get us a little 3/4 inch thick board and set it there. And then we'll take this, we're going to stand it up so I can run my drill down through here. So we'll set that up, and I've got a 3/4 inch board. We can actually set that in there. Let's just butt that up to it, make sure our 2x4 is centered. Now I'm going to run a 3/8 carriage bolt through here to hold this up. Right now I've got the 1/4 inch, and I want this because I've got a 1/4 inch hole already in the leg, and I want to make sure I'm going straight square through this. This will kind of guide me. This was drilled with the drill press, so I know it's good and square with the 2x. So we're going to go ahead, line that up, make sure it lines up good, and I'm just going to drill it. But I don't want to hit the bench, so I'm going to spin this around a little bit so I can drill it through and let it hang over the bench a little bit. There we go. That allows me to hold it in place, and we can go ahead and drill it. I would have one of them, and then we'll simply flip it over and put this here. Now this leg is going to go with that one because I know it's made up perfect for it. I'm going to take my next leg. And it shouldn't really be a difference because I have all these jigged out anyways, but in this case the board's just a little bit thicker than the other, whatever. So we'll go ahead and drill this one out. And that's got that one done, and I would just go ahead and mark this as 1, and this one as 1, and then you know it'll match up. And then this one here is 2, and we'll put a 2 on this one so we know. That just keeps everything so we know that when we get all done, everything should line up perfectly. And then we'll do the other one, and that'll have that set done. And then we'll just come back through with our 3/8 drill and drill through there, and then show you how to set up the lengths of your legs. Okay, next we've got everything lined up, everything's drilled out. We've got the 3/8 bit through there. We've got some carriage bolts, some 4-inch galvanized carriage bolts. I've started them, I've put the legs on them a little bit. Now when this thing gets done, we're going to have this up so that the top of this with the plywood on there is 12 inches to the top, is what they say is the standard. So we're going to go ahead and show you 2 different ways to do that. The directions I have actually do have a dimension that shows the distance, if you were to look at them, from this point to here and the angle that this should be cut at. And that would probably be fine. If you don't have them though, I wanted to show a way you can actually get it figured out and make sure that they're just perfect. So if you're going to do this 12 inches off the ground, what I do is I pick that thing up and I take my tape measure and I figure out 12 inches. This is going to have a 1/2 inch sheet of plywood on there, so I drop it down to there. It's going to be about 8 inches off the table. Will give me exactly what I need. So I've combined a coffee can and a 2x6, and when I put those 2 together and set that on there, I'm coming up with just shy of 11.5, which will put me exactly at 12 inches when I put the plywood on there. So we know that's correct. So what we need to do next is we've got to figure this angle out, and the best way to do that is just take your leg and spin it around. And then when you set it up next to the table, on this side, we know that if that comes down, it's going to hit flat against the bench. It's up against this where it's supposed to be. Make sure that's good and tight. So when we go to do this, to figure out that exact angle, now all we have to do is draw us a line that matches against the table. And when we do that, we'll be able to simply cut it off, and it'll be exactly the right dimension and have us off the top. So that marks that side. We can swing that one back out of the way, and then we'll move this whole thing to the other side of the workbench. Get it off to the side, keeping our thing under it. And on this side, we'll do exactly the same thing. So we'll spin this around, make sure it's up tight against that. Everything's sitting flat on the ground like it's supposed to. And you simply draw your line on there. And now you've got the two of them marked. You also have the mark on it to indicate which one goes on what side, because we already did that before. And now we'll just pop the legs off and go ahead and cut them off and find out what that angle is. So that's how you would calculate that, and we'll show you how that looks when we get her done. Okay, and I've simply set this up to cut my angles, lined up my pencil line. Looks like we're a little over 30 degrees on this one. So we'll go ahead and cut this. And that should get us pretty close. And we should, according to that, this should be approximately, I don't know, I think 14 inches long, but we'll see. We'll take this back over and put it on. I've already cut the other one. So we'll take it to the table here and see how it measures up. We'll stick this one on. And move this over a little bit here. Oops, would help if I put that on the right direction, I think. Yes, we do these foolish things every now and then. There we go. That should be a little better. And we'll push that in a little bit more. And now we're sitting at 11.5 inches off the table, so that works out just perfect. Sets nice and flat on the table, and it's ready to go. So the next step we can do is, according to the directions, those should have been about right. I think it was actually indicating approximately 13 inches long and approximately 29 degree angle. So we're close to what the directions are, but they're not quite exact. So that would have put the dimension off a little bit more than I would care for, I think. So I think I'd rather go ahead and set it up again and do it the way I did. That way they'll both be exactly the same height, and you'll have a fair game that way. So we're going to go ahead and set this one up the same way. Otherwise, we could have gone in here and simply measured our 13 inches and cut this at 29 degrees and set it on there, and that probably would be fine. But I do like the idea of having it exactly 12 inches off the table so it meets the specs. So I think that's a little bit more accurate than just going by the plans on this. So we'll go ahead and do the other one, and we'll go to the next step. All right, we've got the legs all are put on, both of them now. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and put some nuts and washers on there. I'm going to just go ahead and put a nut and a washer on each one of them and get those started, and then secure those down. And once I get done with that, and snug it down a bit, there's something that you do need to kind of watch out for. And this is kind of why I like to do my legs separate too, because things get off just a little bit. So when I tighten this up, our plywood's going to sit right on top of this. So when it does do that, we need to make sure that this surface misses that leg. And if you can see that one there is just protruding just a little bit right now. So when I tighten it up, I think it's going to do that. And if it's doing that, I'm going to have to take and sand that down a little bit to make sure that that doesn't interfere with the plywood. The other side, you see, it looks good. So This one here is a little bit off of the other, and that's why I don't like making all my legs the same. And this way they sit nice and square and balanced on the floor, because things just don't always come out perfect, so you work around making sure that they do work. But that's the biggest thing, is when we go to turn these legs around and we put them back in place, they've got to clear this top board right here. They've got to have this, has got to stay below that surface, or we're going to have problems. So this one here I want to take back off. I'm going to run over there to the sander and make sure that I get that cleared up a little bit before I put it back on here and bolt it down. And we'll check each one of those as we go around. Okay, we've got these all set in, and we're going to try to show you what the next step is. Let's turn around this way maybe so you can see. You see our legs are in. We've made sure that they're below the surface. So now when you pick them up, they should move fairly freely. The only other thing I did here, I didn't have lag bolts that were, or carriage bolts exactly what you need, but you only really need about a 4-inch carriage bolt. And I double nutted mine just to make sure they wouldn't come off. But this is what they had at the hardware store, so I had to go with what they had, and I will cut this off with a hacksaw or a cut wheel and get that. So the next thing, we want to brace these two apart here. So we can do it, but I would recommend when they're out here like this, you still get a little bit of movement. So I would say we're probably going to be better off to not measure this distance here. I would probably say that the accurate distance is going to be in here. So you want that to be here, and you don't want it to be real tight, and you want to make sure you don't make it too long. And we're looking on this one about 17 5/8 inches. So I'm going to put a 2x4 between here, and we'll screw that down, and it'll hold those two legs together. We'll do that on both of them, and show that when we're done with that. Okay, we've cut this, and I think we want to leave that up off the floor about, I don't know, I've chose 3/4 inch, something in that area. And we're going to set it back in, just kind of a little bit off the front face of the 2x legs. And I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hit a couple of holes here. And we'll put some wood screws in there. That's a little pilot hole, and countersink it again. One and one more. And I'm just putting 2 in each end. Just kind of line it up. Like I said, this is nothing too critical on this. Just make it look decent. I think we'll take care of that. And the same thing on this side. We'll go ahead and just kind of shoot a couple of holes in her. And a couple screws on this side. Make sure we're kind of lined up about the same. And one more. And that's got that tightened up. So now they should just bring it right up. Of course, the plywood will be on top of this when we're all done, and that'll hold everything in place, and we'll be in good shape. So pull that out, set her down, and we're good. And we'll go ahead and set the other one up, and we've about got the framework done, and about ready to start on the top of it. So, but I'll go ahead and finish the other one up and get it looking like this. All right, we've got the boards installed on that one and the other. And so now we've got to go ahead and cut the plywood. So the first one, of course, these are going to be 48 inches long. So what we're going to do is cut that to make up the 48 inches. And I want the grain on the plywood to go this way when I get done, because it's going to look better. So, I do have this luxury of a saw. Makes it cutting sheet good really easy. So we're going to go ahead and cut this at 48 inches for now, and just cut the length of the sheet. So we're ready to go. We'll verify my measurement is 48 inches exactly, and this will make the 2 boards. So we'll go ahead and take this back over towards the table saw, and we could cut this on this one, but I want a nice straight edge on that, and I can handle a 4-foot one pretty easily, I think. Or we can do it here. Now let's just go ahead. This is just as easy. We'll put it on this one. Get that out of the way, and we'll measure those and make sure that I have it exactly the same. So I'm going to measure the board on this. And we'll set this one up to measure that. Right there. We'll cut that one. And we'll cut the other one in a minute, but this is this gives you the idea. We have that one set on there, so it is perfectly cut to fit this board, and then we'll do the other one and set it on there, and we'll have to start laying out the hole for the bags to come through. So we'll cut that and show how that's done in this area. Okay, we've got both of those cut, and now what we're going to do is, for the measurements that they give on this, we want to go in the center of the board. So depending on how exact your board came out, mine's really just a little bit shy of that, so I found the center of that. If you want to know exactly where the center is, if it's off a little bit, you measure from this side with your tape measure down here and put it on something you know is accurate. It's a real easy way to do this. So if this measures 2 foot at this end, put the 2 foot mark on there diagonally and just cut that in half, which would be exactly 12 inches, and we know we're dead in the center. So that could be off a little bit. If you ended up being over 24 inches, you can come up here to 26, say, and split that in half, and at 13 on your tape measure, it's going to be your halfway point that way. And then once you've established that, then they also want the center of this hole to be 9 inches down from the top. So we've got our center point there, and then what we should do is have I believe it's a 6-inch hole in this. So that'd be a 3-inch radius. So we can take our protractor and do that. I do happen to have a 6-inch hole saw, so I can use this to cut the hole in it, or we can use the jigsaw. Now the only thing you're going to have to watch out for, if you use this, you would do it from the top because it's not going to splinter out. If you're going to do this with a jigsaw, I'd probably recommend that you do this on the back side of it, because when you run your jigsaw around this, it's going to chip out on the top side. So you'll do it from the bottom side. That way you'll be able to keep it a lot smoother surface up on the top. So we're probably going to go ahead and just run one of these with it first, and then come back. Maybe we'll do the other one too. We'll see how I feel, see how well it works. This is getting old and a little bit dull, so I may have to use jigsaw anyway. So we'll see how it works out. All right, so we've got the 6-inch hole saw. Like I said, this could make it very easy. If you ever do use one of these, hold on to it. I'd highly recommend, because if this gets caught on that wood as it's going through, it will definitely tear you up. So we line that up onto our point, and we start filling it, and make sure you have that thing held on. And once we get halfway through that, because I don't want to rip out the other half either, we'll go ahead and unclamp, spin this over, and we'll clamp it back down on this side. And I think as I was doing that, I think my battery's about dead, so we may have to change out the battery here, but we'll check it one more time. Yep. So let's see if that'll help get us through. Make sure the drill itself did. And a lot of times, these little drills, they're 20 or 18 volt. They're not quite as strong as we need for this kind of thing. They might overheat a little bit, so be careful with that. And we've got a perfect 6-inch hole now, ready to go. And we'll be able to sand that down a little bit, and ready to place it on the board. And that's gives us the cornhole look we're looking for. So we'll go ahead and clean that up a little bit, and then I do see that this is just a little bit out of rack, so we're going to have to rack this one in. And what I mean by that is if we're not quite square, because lumber does this, we will start out attaching this along this edge. And so if I line this up perfectly, top, bottom, and side here, then I can walk around on the other side, and when I look at this end, I can see that my plywood's hanging over a little bit here. I don't know if we can catch that. This camera's not very good at close-ups. So we'll attach the other side, and then we'll clamp that and bring that together to square the rest of this box up. That's just kind of the typical 2-bys in lumber. You have to kind of fight with them a little bit. But that'll be done on the other one, and we should be really close to having us a cornhole ready to put a little sanding on it and finish it up, I think. Okay, we've got both of them set in place. We're going to square this up. I'm going to go ahead and do a pilot hole in this corner. As I say, we're going to have to try to rack this a little bit. And I do like to pilot it, and that's a one-step bit, so I can do both. We'll put a screw in this one. And we'll do one on this corner. Make sure that's lined up. And you really don't need but a probably 1.25 inches would be plenty sufficient for a screw here. Shortest I have is a 2-inch in stock right now, so we're going to use 2-inch. Okay, that holds that in place. And now we're going to do the racking if we can. And we might have to fool with this a little bit, or it might kind of slide right in place. And I think it's going to slide in place just fine. So we'll go ahead and probably throw us a, I can't hold it into it, so I'm going to get a clamp, and we'll set that up on there. I think I have a good 4-foot clamp that I can reach over that. So we should be able to do this just simply to get the rack out of it, make sure that it does stay square. Let's see here. There we go. This should bring us right in line. I want to make sure my clamp's over just enough that I can still get my drill or my screws started. There we go. That lines it up nicely. and then we'll go ahead and pilot these. And once these are started, then we can go around and add another screw about every foot or so to hold it down tight. And that should have us good. So we just, like I say, we can go down through here, 2 more on the side and probably at least 1 more here in the middle to hold it down good. Probably hold that all right. Like I say, probably every foot, and seems like we're 4 foot. We've already got one at both of those. I'll just kind of maybe put 3 down through here. We'll go ahead and measure that, and we'll continue that on around it, and that should have us secured down well, and we'll be ready to go on to the next. Okay, so we've got a cornhole boards there. The only thing left to do on these would be to sand until you're happy, put a finish on them, either paint. These particular ones are going to go ahead and get just a clear coat of polyurethane. You do want them to be fairly smooth and slick. So I'd say, you know, sand them down fairly decent. But other than that, that's pretty much all there is to those. I'm going to show you one other set that I did that I thought was kind of an idea, and you might want to incorporate it, and that's going to be on the legs on the back of it. On this one here, as you remember, we put the cross brace back here, and that's good. But I'm going to take you and show you another set and what I did there, and just as an idea. Okay, so on this one, we'll show you. This is a set that I had built prior to this. This was a set that I've been actually using for a while. You can see I've just painted them up. Nothing real fancy, but a little something. But me, I always hate keeping score. So what I did is I took a rod, and I don't know if you can see that, but when you're scoring, there's 21 actually nuts on there. You can use whatever, but you can slide those across, and you have that on both ends. So one person keeps track of the score on one end, and the other person can on the other end. And that way, should you lose count, it's a little bit easier to keep up with it. We always have a problem with it. But that's just an idea, a way to actually do scorekeeping on your boards. But that's what a finished board would look like. And like I say, use your imagination. You've seen them all out there looking in all kinds of ways. So that's the cornhole project. I think that pretty well wraps us up.